Mass consumption makes you the most powerful giant in the land. And you have the best tools in the world to work with. On the job, that is. These tools make you the world's most productive worker. And the money you earn gives you the purchasing power that makes you a real giant.
We have learned that Veblen's conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation are detrimental to a contemplative lifestyle. First, I'd like to explain these two concepts. Conspicuous consumption is purchasing material items for the sole purpose of buying expensive things. This is one way to keep up with the Jones, per se. An example, just a general example would be if you own a nice car and then you see your neighbor pull out with an even nicer car, you're going to go right out and buy a more expensive car just so that you have outdone your neighbor. Some real-life examples we can think of are Floyd Mayweather, a professional boxer. The guy, he has an Instagram account where he will post pictures of a case of watches that are just $6.4 million case of watches, just so he can show people what he has. His car collection, he's always showing it. Just all these things that he doesn't necessarily need, but he feels the need to show everyone just so they know that he has them.
My collection of cars consists of a Ferrari 599 GTB, a Ferrari 458 Spider, a Lamborghini Aventador. When I'm talking about my car collection, I'm only talking about my Las Vegas car collection. I ain't talking about my LA car collection or my Miami car collection.
Another one is Jay Leno. Jay Leno, in his personal collection of cars, owns over 100 different cars, 30 motorcycles, and multiple aircraft, which, if you were to say, do you really need that? He doesn't. He just buys them just to have them. Veblen's second concept is pecuniary emulation, which is simply the effort to equal or surpass another in status associated with wealth. We feel that the standard of living is more relevant now than when Veblen actually wrote about it in his book. People are working and spending all their free time accumulating their self-wealth just so they can have it. We feel our bank account grows because we work all the time but don't necessarily have the time to spend this money. So we feel that we are living pecuniary lifestyles. We may not have the nicest clothes, and people might look at us and think, hey, maybe we don't have the wealth that we actually have based on what they see from our material objects, and they just might assume that we're poor, when in retrospect, that's not actually the case.
So conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation are not the way to live. Joseph Piper's view on leisure is deeply philosophical, and it doesn't involve wasted time or relaxation, but time spent expanding the mind, and all the energy is focused inward on your inner self. And Piper argues that the basis of culture and human spirit is leisure, and when one doesn't practice leisure, the spirit remains stagnant. And looking inward and having spiritual openness with yourself and the world around you is how I would best describe Piper's view on leisure. And leisure is openness and letting feelings and thoughts move freely in and out. Now, leisure transcends the working world, is what Piper says, and conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation are both grounded in the working world. Leisure is more about the process than the end game, which is the exact opposite of conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation. Those are all about the end game and not the process. Leisure is not vacationing, entertainment, or recreation, and these are both major factors of conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation, whether it be going on really expensive cruises or flying to countries just because you can. Those are both factors of conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation. Piper says that leisure is mindful, humble, and an open approach to life, and leisure is not a competition. And conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation are both. It's purely competition with keeping up with the Joneses, your neighbor, trying to get more expensive things than them. And it's the exact opposite of being humble because you're just buying expensive things just for the sake of buying expensive things. So that is Piper's argument against conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation.
Aristotle says that leisure should be the basis of all action. Conspicuous consumption shows that the consumer is not thinking deeply. They are just buying for the sake of buying and not paying attention to the contemplative living. The main point is that there's no deep thought behind what they are buying or the reasons for buying it. According to Dr. Holba, leisure is based entirely on cultivating one's inner self. Conspicuous consumption and pecuniary emulation is solely based on working on one's outer self. There is no time spent contemplatively working on one's self. Instead, there is only time spent on dressing the other self with expensive things and creating an image for the outer world only.